Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And this is Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to talk about, can we still be friends? This is what guys will say to you when they're not really interested in dating you, but they also don't want to seem like a jerk and cut things off. They know that you like them and they don't want to hurt your feelings. So they do that to kind of string you along and maybe even keep you in their back pocket. It's an awful thing to do. In fact, anybody who's been there knows that it doesn't work, and it can be a really, really, really painful thing for the person who has romantic feelings to be strung along that way. And I think in some ways it's immature and it's not very loving. Yeah. It's not very conscious for anybody to even suggest that when they really know that they can't give the other person what they want. Mm. So we have somebody in our program who is going through something like this. Luckily, she's working with us, so we could nip it in the bud pretty quickly, but it could have been a long and protracted, painful experience for her. And we saw that happening, and we called it out and made a suggestion that she cut this off immediately. But let's talk about it, honey. Why would somebody even do that?
Well, both a man and a woman could do that in a relationship, or a relationship that's ended, or maybe not even started. If a man says, can we still be friends, if he's not interested in a romantic relationship, in some ways he's keeping the woman in his back pocket. And it feels great to have someone who adores him. And that, if he's ever lonely, he could pick up the phone. If a woman asks for it, very often she's longing for him and, feels that having a friendship may lead to a romance, either to begin or to recontinue.
If she participates, but women also string men along. Like they will also keep men in their back pocket as sort of their fallback guy.
That's true.
And
it's a dangerous thing. It's dangerous really for both people. For speaking for women, it can create emotional distress. There's the thought that a friendship would be wonderful, just pleasurable. And one has to weigh the pleasure with the anxiety that it produces. And it produces, it may continue to prolong romantic feelings that are unrequited, that are not reciprocated. And it could lead to ongoing heartache and disappointment.
Yeah, and it's just awful. And I think don't you think that the guy knows what's going on, that the woman is waiting and hoping and wanting something to happen?
Well, sometimes a guy doesn't want to hurt a woman. And so he'll say, can we just be friends? Can we still be friends? And in some ways, it hurts more than just ripping the Band-Aid off, because it just creates this prolonged anxiety where that there could be a misinterpretation of signals. Like the woman could just be waiting for a sign saying, well, he texted me back right away twice in a row. And it can cause false hope, and it can cause confusion. And even just reading too much into friendly gestures.
Yeah, it's horrible, and it really puts a woman on any woman that has any anxiety, she's just on edge. She's stalking him on Facebook and looking to see, going on the apps. A lot of times they can go on the apps and see the guy is active there.
Yeah.
Which is, and men can make up stories. I mean, they can tell the women, the app shows me as active. Yeah. And maybe that's true. I don't know. But And he shouldn't have to explain himself if they did agree to be friends. But any mature adult knows that it's not really possible when you have an inequity, an imbalance in the emotional, in the romantic interest.
Yeah.
One person is always going to be waiting for that opportunity, thinking like, it's interesting. It was interesting watching this particular client, how we deceive ourselves. We start to say, oh, well, maybe we can just be friends. And then little things would pop out like, yeah, I was just hoping maybe something would change, or...
Right. I think the woman never, and we could be talking about men also, but the woman never wants it just to be friends. It's like keeping the door open, keeping your foot in the door so it doesn't close.
Yeah.
And just hoping that, he'll come to his senses, he'll see that, that they could have a beautiful relationship. And he's on to other things.
Well, and also the amount of excuses that they make for the other person. Well, in this case, we're talking about the woman, but how many excuses they start. Well, maybe it's not that he's not interested. Maybe he really is busy, and, maybe he'll get a break in his schedule. No, he told you he has a 2-year commitment. He's letting you know he has a very, very heavy work schedule for the next 2 years of his life. I mean, if a guy tells you that, he's basically saying, look, lady, the next 2 years of my life are booked up.
Well, there's an expression that I've used for years, and that people vote with their actions. And so, if someone is into, having a relationship with someone, they'll make time. When you and I met more than 22 years ago, I had I was probably putting in 80 hours a week between my practice, the administration, just all that's involved. And I made more and more time because it was important to me. And if I didn't make time then, it would, really mean that my heart was somewhere else.
Well, can I actually say it's not even just that you made time, but you showed me I was a priority through your actions,
right,
above and beyond that. The way that you would touch base with me or follow through and let me know that we were on for our date, that you had made plans, that you'd gotten tickets for an event.
Right. If you called me, this was before texting. you carved out something in stone, and if you contacted me, I'd get back to you the same day. It wouldn't be like 3 days later.
No, you just, everything that you did let me know that I was a priority. I mean, that's just your nature to do that, even in your work, but you really let me know that you were thinking about me, that you cared about me. And that you never said, I'm busy for the next 2 years,
right, right.
I don't have time. And I'm not laughing, we hear what we want to hear.
Mm.
I also think that sometimes a person with an anxious attachment will go after a man who is playing hard to get, which is, what's happening in this particular scenario. This man is playing hard to get. He's stringing her along, but he is playing hard to get. And maybe he's even avoidant, who knows, but he's not available. And it excites her. It triggers all of that anxious attachment. Yeah. And so she gets even, more sucked in to that relationship. And the more it goes on, the worse it gets. It can become horrible.
Yeah. And the danger also, if someone is so focused on a relationship that can go nowhere, that it excludes her. And again, we could be talking about a man as well, but excludes her from really seeking out an appropriate relationship. There could be some wonderful men out there for her, but that the focus could be so much, and almost like an addiction, to one person, that they are ignoring other romantic possibilities.
Yeah. And the truth is, she hardly know, we often hardly know these people. We get sucked in and project. We're projecting all of these qualities onto this person, but at the same time, it's like we're creating this loop, right? Like we're creating this loop, and then we get pulled in. We put this person on a pedestal. We don't even know them. We compare other people to this idealized version of this person that we don't even really know, who isn't really making time for us, and we're just projecting how wonderful we think they are, but it's very one-dimensional. And then nobody else compares to that person because we haven't, the two people haven't interacted.
Right.
They don't, that she's observing from afar all the qualities and things she thinks, but she hasn't really fought with him, spent enough time, interacted to the point where they could have some contention, or she could learn some unattractive things.
Yeah. And I think that it neglects the most important thing of any relationship, which is trust and safety.
Yeah.
Because the woman never feels safe in the relationship. Like, is he going to call? He didn't call. And so there's always this unsteadiness and even a lack of trust, wanting to trust, deeply wanting to trust, but knowing that one can't really trust because the person has a life of his own and is into other things.
Yeah.
And I think what this leads to is a lack of self-esteem, where when this happens again and again, a woman starts punishing herself. Why am I doing this? Or I'm not good enough for him, over and over and over. How can I be the woman that he really wants? And so it's devastating to self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a trap. It's a trap. The worse you feel, the more trapped you are, and then you can't let it go. You're trying to get approval or get something from this person that you've imbued, that you've almost made perfect. And I coached a woman for an entire year. I think it was longer than that. I think it was 2 years, who had a crush on a guy at work who was just awful to her. And there would be little moments, just enough, I almost had a sense of, he would give her just enough, to keep her on the hook.
Yeah.
But it was awful, and she obsessed over him. It was all she could think about. And if he gave her even the slightest kindness or a look or a smile or whatever, she would, she was just obsessed, and she was so hooked in, and it felt like her very life depended on him, suddenly having this epiphany that she was really the one, and going, it was like a fantasy. Yeah.
And it creates an imbalance of self-esteem for the guy. He's constantly getting stroked, knowing that someone just adores him and is thinking about him constantly. And while she's, knocking on the door that doesn't open, so it's this terrible imbalance of self-esteem. And it also creates this, if there is a friendship, if people try to have a friendship, it's often unbalanced in that the woman may feel, that his needs are greater than hers, and really go out of the way where, to really make sure he's happy, neglecting her own needs and what's important to her.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thing. Have you ever had a situation like that?
I think everyone has. I think it's universal. And I think, hopefully we learn from it, and we learn that, this is not healthy. In fact, it may be impossible to really, ever have a friendship. And it doesn't mean that years later people can't get together, they're both in relationships. But even then, there may be, there's always the danger that someone may still be carrying a spark where the other person isn't. And that creates the imbalance and the heartache.
You know, I've known some very, very, very successful women who struggle to find love, and they wind up either in, you know, and this could actually be in some ways an extension of this friends with benefits relationships, because that's where you even add the sexual, you know, it's friends, right? Yeah. So it's still like, can we be friends? So the man is, or very often in those situations, not always, but often, it's a man who's keeping it in a, you know, making sure that it's framed as friends, right? But with benefits.
And it's the woman who usually bonds because of the sexual intimacy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she feels that there's not only more than what there is, but there will be more than what there is.
Well, and as a woman, it's very hard because we do get emotionally bonded with somebody when we're having sex with them. Whereas men, not always, some men I know do also get emotionally bonded. I know those men as well. But most men can compartmentalize sex. And it's fascinating because the woman thinks that men have to be like she is, right? That a man has to be like her. Well, I'm bonding, you know, we're having these intimate sexual experiences. I'm bonding with him. Surely he must be feeling something too. Why would he be having sex with me? You know, because we attach connection and emotional connection with that. But some men don't. And they can have sex with a woman and just, that's it, and not be emotionally connected at all. And so it can be outside of a woman's ability to understand that men really can compartmentalize sex. Yeah. And they put themselves in those situations and tell themselves, surely he's going to, you know, develop feelings for me.
So this pattern develops where a woman becomes anxious because she's not getting what she needs from the man. And the more anxiety she shows, the more he begins to pull away. And the more he begins to pull away, the more anxious she gets. So it's this terrible cycle where it occupies a great deal of mental real estate for the woman, and the man becomes avoidant, and it just is this miserable situation for both of them.
Right.
And all because she wants to remain friends, or he wants to remain friends, and it's something that just isn't tenable. It's not going to work.
Yeah. And I don't really, you know, it's wild. I think there's just this feeling with a lot of people that they don't want to hurt each other's feelings, but they hurt each other's feelings.
Yes.
And in a way, it's just better to walk away, you know, and cut ties and move on. And that's one of the things we work on with the women in our course, is that we really encourage them not to stay friends with anybody that they, you know, that they've met, because the goal, they want to keep their eye on the prize, which is to find the guardian of their soul. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think holding on to a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And for the man, it's a fantasy that the woman is adoring him and is, you know, and just with one word or one gesture, she'll come over, you know, at his beckoning and, you know, be intimate. And for her, the fantasy is that, well, if I could just keep my foot in the door, which I call being friends, that, you know, he'll eventually come to his senses, he'll get more time for me, all of those things, which aren't going to happen.
No, they're not going to happen. Yeah. All right, honey. Well, I think we could go on, but we won't. We'll hit the pause button there. The only thing I wanted to say is that I have coached some very, very, very smart, successful women, and they are so incredibly successful in their careers. But when it comes to love, none of that translates. And they're as insecure as any 15-year-old schoolgirl. And it's really sad to see it, because I've seen so many women who are really successful get caught up in fantasy relationships with men where it's just unrequited love. And I think the truth is, down deep, they really don't want to look at that stuff and have a real relationship. I think that's their comfort zone. And so it gives them an outlet for their passion, for their emotion, and it gives them a feeling that there's some kind of love story unfolding in their life, but it's really self-deception.
Yeah, and an addiction.
And addiction.
And the addiction takes over someone's life.
Yeah.
And it's something that they have to fight against, just like any addiction. It's not going to go away by itself. It has to go away with purpose and intention.
Yeah, and I highly, highly recommend to anybody who might be going through something like this, if you are in a situation where you cannot break this bond and you feel that it's really taking up way too much real estate in your mind, in your life, and going nowhere, I urge you to check out SLAA, which is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, because if it is an addiction, that is the program for this issue. And the second thing I would do is read Facing Love Addiction by Pia Melody. It's an incredible book. And it's a different take on anxious avoidant relationships and factoring in the component of addiction. So if this is something that feels familiar, what we're saying, and it's really consuming you and something that has been going on for a while and you can't break free, then get some help, because there is help out there, and it's a much deeper and more serious issue than you may think. So, all right. Okay. Well, we send you all our love, and we would be so happy if you would go to lisashield.com, click the button anywhere on my website to watch my free 45-minute presentation. If you like what you hear, you can sign up at the end for a free call with my team. These calls are for successful women, executive women, women who are in professions, lawyers, medical sales, realtors. We are looking for clients who are really high-achieving women who haven't found true love. So whether you're divorced, whether you've suffered a breakup, whether you are a woman who has focused on her career and sort of let her love life fall by the wayside, and especially if you are of childbearing age and you want to find love and a partner and have children before it's too late, please go to lisashield.com and click that button and sign up for a call. Also, if you have ideas, topics for future broadcasts, please send them to podcast@lisashield.com. And we just want to thank you so much. Tell everyone you know, your sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles and your colleagues, nieces, nephews, girlfriends, your guy friends, your mom, your dad, whoever is looking for love and wants to make sense of this, tell them to watch Finding the Guardian of Your Soul. Thank you, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.